Now, the NATO thing, right? Hours before the speech, Trump told Reuters that he was absolutely considering pulling the US out of NATO because European allies wouldn't join the war on Iran or help reopen the Strait of Hormuz. And that threat dominated the news cycle. It sent European defense ministries into complete panic mode, and then nothing. He didn't announce withdrawal in the actual address. He raised some frustrations. He made it clear that Europe's on its own for securing Middle Eastern oil, but stopped short of the formal declaration that anyone and everyone was essentially expecting. And I think that that's the move here. Float the threat, let it do the political work, and then withhold the actual decision. And the ambiguousness of this is the leverage. He gets to keep NATO anxious. He gets to keep Europe scrambling, and reserves the option to either follow through or pretend that he was never serious. And meanwhile, he's already shifted the Strait of Hormuz problem onto the Europeans' shoulders. If you want the oil, you have to go secure it. And the US just redefined its role from global guarantor to arms dealer with an attitude. And another thing that it does too is it opens up another potential for markets for him to be able to manipulate, where he's like, oh, maybe I will, maybe I won't, maybe or Europe will, maybe Europe won't. So that like people closer to him in Europe will be able to know and be able to benefit from these things. And the part that should scare normal people, right? CBS reported before the speech that hundreds of special operations forces, plus thousands of Marines and Army paratroopers, are currently positioned in the region. That's not for withdrawal, right? That's not for contingency. That's for possible operations to include reopening the strait by force, striking Carg Island's oil terminal, or, and this one's ambitious, seizing the Iran stockpile for enriched uranium. And as I said earlier, I think that there's a chance that they might fake that they did that, like fake that they went and got the uranium out and not actually have gotten the uranium out, but just like stage it to make it look like they did. And again, that's like one of the only ways, like that would be a like an off ramp where they can just claim, yeah, we took all the uranium, they don't have anything. And you just use like a field in a desert in Kuwait or something. Because you have this posture, right? With that posture, you don't stage that amount of forces for that kind of ground capability if you're going to be just winding down. It's one of those, again, move it or lose it things. And that's the infrastructure of escalation. That's the escalation trap. Trump can say we're finishing the job in 2 to 3 weeks all he wants, but the force posture says the opposite. And the contradiction isn't a sloppy message either. It's intentional. It keeps options open at all times and it lets him claim victory while preserving the ability to go harder if he decides that it's useful. And he promised to hit Iran, quote, extremely hard over the next 2 to 3 weeks and send them, quote, back to the Stone Age where they belong, in the same speech where he said the mission's almost complete. And that's not unintended confusion, right? That's intended flexibility. The public gets a timeline and a victory narrative, and the military gets authorization to keep hammering. And markets see through it immediately, which is why oil spiked the moment he finished talking. And let's talk about those oil prices for a second, because Brent crude had been climbing since this started. The International Energy Agency is warning the global supply system has gone from buffered to fragile. April's projected oil loss is double what March's was. One more disruption, and there's nothing left to absorb the shock. But Trump has blamed Iran for this situation when Trump was the one who started it, right? And not the war he started, not the bombing campaign that the US has initiated. It is Iranian attacks on tankers that he has said is the cause for this, as if the whole thing didn't start because the US decided to destroy, Iran's strategic military capacity. And US gas is over $4 a gallon right now, up 30%. Diesel's above 5. those costs don't land on the people making the decisions. They land on working people trying to get to work, to heat their homes, to move goods. And the framing is already set because it's Iran's fault for resisting, not it's America's fault for starting the war. And that's how imperial costs get externalized. The war is over there. The bill shows up here, and the explanation never mentions cause. It only mentions effect. So, what did we learn from the speech? We learned that the war is not ending anytime soon. That regime change was never the goal because subordination is cheaper and far more sustainable, right? And Trump's ready to dangle NATO, the NATO withdrawal, as leverage while making Europe responsible for its own oil security, which is just hilarious. And that thousands of US troops are staged for operations that haven't been authorized yet, and they could be at any moment. And that the oil markets are pricing in exactly what the speech tried to obscure. And the fact is that this is nowhere near being over. And this empty address is essentially just a placeholder, a way to look decisive while keeping every option on the table. And the markets saw it, Iran saw it, Europe saw it. The only people expected not to see it are the American public, because the American public, they were just told that the mission is almost complete while the infrastructure for escalation quietly keeps expanding in the background, which is not a sustainable place to be.